Hey there, and welcome to the Think Fitness Life podcast. We're fueled by the incredible clients who inspire us every day, allowing us to elevate their health and fitness journeys. On this show, you'll gain valuable insights from top professionals, hear inspiring transformation stories, and discover the knowledge and motivation to create your own best life. Let's dive in. As someone who has continuously used therapy as a way to heal and elevate my personal performance, I know wholeheartedly that you cannot always read the label when you're in the jar. And that's why it's so helpful to have a professional in your corner to talk to. This podcast is sponsored by BetterHelp to provide our listeners with the opportunity to work with a licensed therapist from the comfort of your own home. Receive 10% off your first month when you sign up by going to betterhelp.com/TFL. That's betterhelp.com/T as in think, F as in fitness, L as in life. And remember, you're not alone. There are people out there who can help.
All right, welcome back to the Think Fitness Life podcast. And today we are diving into the realm and world of asymmetrical human beings, asymmetries. Humans have them, we live with them, but people tend to over panic. They tend to care too much about them at times and over focus on the asymmetries, and they allow their programs, their exercise, their return to sport, their life to be dictated by these asymmetries, and it becomes a focal point. We are going to break down today how I look at asymmetries, how I approach them, and why I understand them, I care about them, but they don't drive the full system. So we are going to dive in for some people who may be new here, who have never heard about Posture Restoration Institute or what I do. That is my background. I use that along with many other things in my model of training, but we're going to come on from a lens from that perspective. And one of the biggest teachings of PRI is that the human body is asymmetrical, period, and that is it. Now, most humans, when they go to the gym or just most humans in life, we are going to look at ourselves symmetrically, and that is by design. To go into the Brain Sense of Movement book, there's a quote: "A body of evidence shows that the brain makes these assumptions of continuity and rigidity, which helps in construction coherence. The brain also favors symmetry and thus tends to impose symmetry on the world it perceives." So what we're looking at is the human brain wanting to have symmetry in things that we look at, the human visual system creating symmetry. So when we look at ourselves in the mirror, yes, we are going to see at a quick glance, we're going to see symmetry. And we have two arms, we have two legs. We have a left arm, left leg, right arm, right leg, vice versa. And it all looks symmetrical. And we perceive ourselves as symmetrical. And when we do movements, we want to think of ourselves as doing things symmetrically, and we want buildings to be symmetrical, and so on and so forth. This is what the brain is constructing the world to be, and it's what it's searching for as a perception, and it's to perceive things that are going to happen and make predictions. That's what our brain's going to do. But underlying all this, we are asymmetrical. The brain is asymmetrical. We have a left hemisphere and a right hemisphere that have areas that do two different things. When we pull back the layers of our body with our two arms, two legs, we get into the thorax. We have organs on one side of the body that we don't have on the other side of the body. We have functions on one side of the body that happen different than the other side. We could get into the minutiae fine details of it all that start to dictate how our asymmetrical construct really drives systems and patterns and movements. And that is the baseline. When we're saying that we're asymmetrical, yeah, we are. We need to be, we have to be. It is how animals and creatures function. It's how humans function. But we get wrapped up in this world, in the sports world or the measurement world, returning to PT, is asymmetries. Oh my gosh, there's asymmetries. Yeah, there will always be asymmetries. Now, asymmetries are a good thing. We have to have this asymmetrical body. It's by design. It's how we live. It's how we manage pressure. It's how we function. And it's how we survive. We're not changing the system at all. We're not trying to become more symmetrical from a system standpoint. What we are trying to do is understand that the brain, we're trying to get symmetry from side to side sense. If we can sense one thing going on the right side of the body, we want the left side to sense the same or very similar things in order to move, in order to walk, talk, and be able to do all the things we do. That doesn't mean we do the exact same thing on both sides. And this is where it gets a little fun. And this is where today's topic is really going to take a dive into, because I was recently at a conference listening to the speaker, a couple conferences listening to the speaker, and one big question came up was, what do you do about the asymmetries when you can measure? And even in my line of work, we test athletes, we use force measures, we have equipment that uses and get all the information. We have the Vault's force frame, we had force decks, which is all great tools. Whatever tools and metric you use to measure, that is awesome. And measuring is good. I'm not saying it's not. I think people get too hung up on the measurements. We do a lot of ACL return to play protocols or return to sport protocols. And we are comparing left side and right side, which is totally valid. But what we often see is physical therapists or even the athletes alone, maybe even some doctors. Now they're looking at measurements, which is fine, but they are becoming hell-bent on trying to create symmetry in the human body and match those numbers to say, hey, this side is going to equal this side, which is understandable. We want them to both be symmetrical. But the hardest thing to tell a lot of people is the human body is not symmetrical. It will never be symmetrical, and there will always be differences. Now, I don't want to come on here and people think it's always going to be asymmetrical. You don't want crazy differences. You don't want 50% strength differences from side to side. But the fact that people are chasing symmetry and not understanding where and why it is, first off, there is the problem to me. And it is not a strength thing. Yeah, you could argue and say, hey, it is a strength thing. Sure. At some point, it is a strength thing. But if I put a perfectly healthy person on the force frames and we're going to measure, or stand on the force decks and we're going to measure force and data, I'm expecting to see some asymmetries side to side. One side might be good at certain things. The other side might be good at other certain things. It is a bunch of data points that we can take in and look at as coaches and therapists to use in our treatment, in our programming, and also to help explain movement patterns, how people are moving through space, why people are moving through space in the manner that they are. But we also get hyper fixated on, oh my gosh, there's a 12% asymmetrical difference. We need to correct that. Okay, let's say if you do, by all means, get them strong. Get that person strong in a asymmetrical strength test. Great. To me, that does not tell me the person's neurological capabilities of sequencing motor patterns to then move through space to perform their sport. They just got a strength measurement. Yes, when people freak out about asymmetries, that's one part of the picture, one part of the person that you're looking at. And I don't think that they are going to be the end driver of here's how we have to treat, or they're going to pass just because they get symmetrically. So you put a perfectly healthy person on and you measure their calf raise, let's say, and what's it going to look like? Oh, one side might be better than the other. Great. Now, Is it a strength thing? Maybe not. Most therapists and coaches will look and be like, you have to just get your left calf to be stronger than your right calf. And you can do all the calf work in the world, get them both stronger. And let's say you retest and there's still an asymmetry there. Now what is it really a strength thing? What we need to understand, and we pull back the lens of this world in the strength and conditioning and rehab world, that asymmetries are all over the body. And they're going to preface how the body develops in the first place. That asymmetrical strength that you're looking at might not actually be just a strength issue. It might be a motor pattern movement that was developed a long time ago, and that's just the strategy that person uses to produce their task or to go on the field and run. Now, there is research and literature that will show that if you have asymmetries, you're highly and more likely to have injuries. And that's fact. We want to address them, but we also want people to know that it's not just, oh, your left side's weaker than your right side, or right side's weaker than your left side. Not at all. It's going to present that way, but we look at it, and I look at it as a lens of, is that left side in a different phase of movement, different phase of forward locomotion than the right side? And if when we're testing it, are we capturing the right phases of movements? Are we timing that up from a patterning sequence? Or is that person using the same sequence? Now we start to get into the deeper asymmetrical motor patterning, where we want both sides to be symmetrical in the motor patterning and the sequencing, not in the strength realm. And how do we do that? We train the patterns to equate for our asymmetrical being. And that's the whole realm of how I use PRI, and what PRI is understanding that we are designed asymmetrically, and we have to coach the body differently, and we can't treat it symmetrically no matter what. And most people have never heard that. They will never hear that. Hopefully they can tune in and understand that. Take away the outside layers and we're asymmetrical, and that's going to drive patterns when we try to do things of symmetry. A great example is if I am standing or more biased to my right and I'm in right stance, that means my left leg is in a different phase of forward locomotion. It might be more in early swing. Yeah, so if I'm in stance on the right side, my left could be in swing. It could be an early pickup, late reach. It could be in different phases of the forward locomotion or gait cycle than the other side. And when we're looking at any exercise program, protocol, or just athletics, body and movement, we have to understand that the body is going to be in different phases of movement on each side and the opposite on the other side. So those asymmetries need to be there for performance and function. Now, when the person goes to do the same thing on the opposite side to get into left stance, let's say, they need all the patterning and sequencing in the muscle co-activation, simultaneously activation to turn on. If not, then other muscles will start doing it, and we get overload patterns, we get overuse injuries, we might have acute injuries, we might start to build a better sense of driving poor patterns. So therefore, the asymmetries are driving the patterns. It's not the strength. Getting back to it, I know a lot of coaches tend to hyper-focus on this asymmetrical state from a testing standpoint, and it does not need to be that worried about. If we start to understand and pull back the deeper layers of the human body, you're going to understand that we should be training the human body in symmetry, but in a state of asymmetrical sense and knowledge. And it's hard. It's not easy, but it's going to bring a lot better sense of control, flow, movement patterns, and overall well-being to the person you're working with, or even to yourself if you're loading in those mechanics and working in those mechanics. The asymmetrical life, it's here to stay. We're not going to change it. We're always going to be asymmetrical. One side is going to be more patterned and stronger cortically than the other side. That's fine. I'm a righty. My right arm is way better and more motor pattern than my left. That doesn't mean my left is weak. It's just in a different pattern, and I don't have the sequencing and reps and sets on my right versus my left. A great example of this, if you want to test this out at home, is brushing your teeth. Use your dominant hand, whatever that is, to brush your teeth. Now switch up the hands and use your other hand. See the motor pattern differences from that sequence side to side. It's not a strength issue. It's more of the brain mapping out that sequence of patterning because you don't do it enough, or you don't do it often or at all. I don't really brush my teeth with my left hand at all. I don't expect that pattern to be really strong. Now, I could train that pattern to be really strong. You've heard it. We've heard many things. I've heard it in other podcasts and read books that people did things with both hands when they were, in training, especially in the military, to do things both sides. They can do it if they have to go to one side of the body or the other side, or around a corner or not around a corner. I've heard crazy things of how to train your body to do it, which you can. I'm not saying you have to, but let's pull that back to the athlete realm. The athlete returning from an injury who is chasing symmetry from a strength side to side. That's awesome. But where did their baseline begin already? And the hard thing with a lot of our athletes that we get is we don't have baselines of their initial strength. Yeah, we have it when they get injured and they do their return to play testing. We get numbers. Some of them we do have numbers right off from the bat. If they do come in, do one of our injury prevention evaluations, we have those numbers. But to understand that when we test them, they can already be starting off in that asymmetrical state. And a lot of people will ask, oh, how come my numbers are different side to side, and what can I do with it? Most of the time, your run-of-the-mill coach is going to say, oh, you need to strength train, which they're not wrong. And they give you a bunch of exercises to do, bilateral exercises and unilateral exercises, which is great. But if you do them, and I've talked about this before, and don't understand the asymmetrical human being, there's a point, you can get away with it, but there might be a point where you reach a difficult or a crossroad where you're not actually getting the same result side to side if we're going a lot of unilateral or single arm, single leg work as you might be thinking. And it's not because you're not getting stronger from one side or the other. It's not because you have a dominant arm. It's because of the pattern that's underneath. You might be trying to do the same thing on the left as on the right, but you just don't understand that you might already be over in the right too far to get what you want out of it. Not saying you can't do the same thing eventually, but our goal is, as trainers, especially in the PRI world that are trainers, is we're trying to get you to understand, to tell the brain to understand that it can do things on both sides symmetrically, but it needs a place to start. And if you don't give that place or give that brain a place to start, it's harder for the brain to create a strength curve, to create that movement sequencing, because it will default to what you have been doing for years and what you will continue to do. Therefore, people come in and they're trying to move the needle of strength, and they've been doing all this work. And I applaud everyone who's out there doing the work and trying to get people stronger, but they are missing the boat. One example we had a couple weeks ago, I had an athlete come in and they have been trying to get their quads bigger, because that's one measurement that we use to test our athletes back to ACL protocol, to get their quads bigger and quads stronger. Perfect. And they came in and they said, I've hit a plateau and I haven't been able to get my quads bigger. I said, okay, what exercises have you been doing? A lot of lunges, a lot of squats, a lot of leg extensions, and a lot of rear foot, or I should say, a lot of Bulgarian split squats. I said, okay, in my head, I'm thinking, all right, here we go. Great exercises. Perfect. My first question was, how were you performing the Bulgarian split squats? Oh, putting my leg up on a bench or putting my leg up on one of the rear foot elevated pads to do it. I said, okay, great. That's not a true Bulgarian split squat. And there's more ways to target the quad from an actual Bulgarian split squat, which is maybe 4 to 6 inches off the ground, more quad focus, more upright vertical torso. And then I asked the questions about the squats and the lunges. Okay, you've been doing all this work, adding some weight, doing it resisted. Where are you feeling all the tension when you go to perform these exercises? Oh, I just feel them in my knees. Right then and there, that gives me as a coach my answer. She was feeling it right below the patellar, right below the kneecap, right below the patella. And that tells me that she's been using a strategy of using her patella tendon as the fulcrum point and pressure point because she has not understood how to put her pelvis in the right position to actually allow the quads and glutes to sequence together and to actually use the quads effectively for push-off. Unfortunately, this one does fall back on her physical therapist. And sometimes if you want a good kind of insight of rehab and my thoughts, go back to last couple episodes and listen to that. I won't reiterate, but there are some PTs that they missed the boat, and that kind of falls on the education system that PTs now fall in. And this is one thing that's driven me to be a more knowledge coach, to dive into the PRI world and learn more about how the system functions to better help these. This athlete, we did the knee extension test and had them push in. So they're pushing their lower shin against a dynamometer to get the force output, and all they're feeling is the front of their knee compress. Right there, they are just using a strategy of patellar tendon. They're going to outwear that. They're going to create problems because they don't actually know how to use the quad, because that quad is already in a shortened state. How do I know this? Because I then watched them and had them perform a slight pelvic tilt to get their pelvis back underneath them, and the quad came online. Assuming, not always, but you're assuming that most humans are in some sort of anterior pelvic tilt due to gravity, that they have a harder time. Now, maybe it's not the case, but in my head, I'm already thinking they have a harder time from a just biomechanics position to activate their quads. And they're telling me that they're having a trouble activate their quads and growing them, that they're not actually sensing and feeling the quads work. And they're doing all this great work, but their body isn't in a position to allow the quads to work. So now you're doing all the strength training for 3 to 9 months, and you come in, and it does break my heart that a lot of people do all this work and they're expecting great results, and they're not getting into the positions that they need to, because they have to understand that the body is asymmetrical, and the positions that start in. All we did, we got their pelvis underneath them, thorax stacked on top of them to sense and open up the sense of glutes. And then we got their knees to decompress by changing that position. And are allowing their quads to now have a runway where they can now work to be concentric and eccentric and actually sense feeling and pressure to co-activate with the glutes. That will allow her to hypertrophy the quads and actually use the quads as quads, and not just use the attachment of the quads as a way to move through space. And this comes back to, now we're chasing symmetry, because her end goal was to get her quads online even more, which is a valid thing. And even saying that, you can double the volume on your injured leg side versus the other. That's perfect. Or you put the leg that's maybe it's not injured, maybe it's just different numbers when you test it. Put that leg in different positions. Put the pelvis in different positions to see if you can start turning on the quad in different phases of forward locomotion or different phases of gait. And this is where the world of gait mechanics and strength and conditioning really get combined and get bled into it. From my model standpoint, is you have different phases. You have early stance, you have mid stance, you have push off, which all need to be understood by the brain. It all needs to be trained by the brain. When you get into programming, I have exercises that I program in mid stance, and I'm capturing certain aspects and qualities of muscles and movements and rotation that I want. Then I have programming in early stance or late stance, which is different pelvis mechanics, different femur mechanics, similar muscles that I'm capturing the sense of working together as references, but they're in different phases of movement. The body's might be in a slightly different phase and positions. The brain understands it and it says, okay, when I go to perform my sport or when I go to get out of this chair, walk, I understand that I might start in mid stance, but I need to push and go into late stance to push off. And I'm allowing a human's brain to capture all of those and not just train into one realm of movement, and then I can add full movements. A great example of this would be, let's call it a split squat. In mid stance, I'm going to coach that person to feel a little bit more internal rotation. The left leg's in front, right leg's in back. We're going to turn or orient that pelvis and zipper line a little bit more to the left. As we're going into mid stance, as we're going and feeling mid stance really working as a unit. Then, if I wanted to train earlier late stance, I can then bias that pelvis to turn in different ways. I might have that zipper line orient a little bit back towards the midline or towards the other side to train that left quad and left glute to say, okay, we're starting to now come off of this leg and we're going to push into a different direction, which is now training a whole different phase of gait. But we're still targeting the same muscles, because as we go, we have to be able to load positions. The tissue has to be able to accept all that. Now we start to get into the weeds of how my programming and my model look from a training standpoint, where we're now really getting specific on certain aspects of training. And the people I mentor have always asked me these questions. Oh, I thought it's always we want to turn the pelvis in and get mid stance. Young in my career, I would have said, yes, this is how it has to be. Now, learning more, reading more, taking more courses, I'm breaking it down to different phases of forward locomotion to look at, hey, here is how we're going to train this glute in a little bit of more external rotation, positioning with the quad to understand it. Because at some point, that's what an athlete's going to need if they're going to go to jump or run or do any sort of cutting. I can't always train them with glute max in a certain position where more pelvis is IR and we're creating more femur adduction in IR to capture mid stance. But I can train it, but it's flow, it's fluid, and it can be trained in multiple different ways. But I firmly believe that the person who is doing the exercise needs to understand that. The person coaching needs to understand. You can't just say, hey, go do a split squat, and I don't care where your pelvis is, and I don't care where your femur is, and I don't care what you feel. That will get you nowhere, because the brain's biggest learning is from sense of pressure. So if you're not sensing things turn on or senses of pressure in the body, it might be muscle belly pressure through the floor or a sense of spots on the body impinging to create pressure, whether it's a femur on a pelvis or a shoulder on a thorax or a bicep curl feeling pressure, the brain's not going to learn. You have to put the body in the right position to understand it's asymmetrical. We're gaining symmetry motor patterning to sequence the body to be able to do the same thing when we stand on the left as we do on the right, all while knowing that the left side and right side will never function the same. And I've been doing PRI for 10 years now. And I will tell you that my right side and my left side function completely different. They are pretty damn close in capability, but when I do certain things, like a single leg box jump, I can just tell that my right side is different than my left. When I go to run, I can tell that my right side just doesn't have the push off that my left does. And I've been doing exercise and PRI techniques for years, and I continue to do it and continue to work at it, but it's something to understand that it will always be asymmetrical. I'm always working to get my biases out of the hole. And that was created from years of playing baseball and playing one dominant sided sports that I use to leverage my athletic ability. And I'm okay with that. It doesn't impede me from doing any lifts or any runs or any athletic ability. I just know that I might have to work a little bit more to get me out of it. And when I test, I know one side is going to be a little bit different than the other, but it doesn't put me in a world of I need to all of a sudden stop everything that I'm doing, strip things down and rework. And I think that's another area that people start to overprotect when they talk about asymmetries is you can't do certain things and you have to only work on your asymmetrical side. That's the worst thing that you can do for a human body, especially if you're injured, because both sides need to function together. And if you just work one side, you're motor patterning one side versus the other. And it's funny when you hear people talk about, oh, I should only do this side to get it better, my injured side to catch up. It's like, no, you want to do both sides. And you want the patterning to be the first thing. And that gets me to my next thing that I really hear when we get to this big S word about strength. And I love strength, but it's not about strength. Getting the human body to function is all about sequencing sense of pattern. You can get strong, sure. You can use machines to get strong all day, all you want. But when you go to measure the patterning and the motor pattern, that's the more important. The neurological sense of movement is really what we are after. We want that neural adaptation more than anything. We want to train the adaptation of the neurological system. Don't worry about tissue adaptation at first, but you want to train their system to be really good at the neural pattern. Technique is one of the best expressions of athleticism, of walking, of life. Have you been on that journey to look for that supplement? Nothing too extreme. The one you're looking for that gets the job done and you actually feel it. Well, I have that supplement for you. It's Recommend, Man Formula, Lady Formula, and Clear Focus. Only 3 supplements this company has. And that's all you need, whether you're going to stack them. My favorite's the stacked. Man Formula plus Clear Focus. If you're a female, Lady Formula, Clear Focus. My squats have not been better. My lifts have not gone better. I feel stamina, energy, endurance during the lift. I feel great recovery-wise. Throughout the day, I have energy and focus. My brain feels good. My central nervous system is turned on. And most important, sexual function. When I tell you that it packs a punch and gives you what you need from a man's perspective, it enhances hormones. It optimizes my mitochondria. And you know what? It gives me the drive and libido that I could never complain about. Plus all the other performance things, that is this supplement. Recommend supplements putting the cleanest ingredients in their products to be the optimal stop for overall health, performance, hormones, you name it. It's got stuff like Tonkat Ali in there for strength. It's got L-arginine for blood flow performance. Stuff you didn't even think about. Then the Clear Focus, we're talking nootropics through and through. Brain health, optimizing focus, clarity. Screw those energy drinks. Screw multiple cups of coffee. My morning routine, I have 1 cup of coffee. I put Clear Focus and I take my man formula, I stack them together, and my day is on. And you can take advantage and get on the same regimen. Check out recommend.com. Use code TFL20 for 20% off and get control. Take advantage of your health today. That is the primary focus. Getting strong will come as you strengthen the neural pattern. Getting strong and building strength, that will 100% come with it. And it'll be a byproduct. But when we start to attack these asymmetries, it's not about just saying, hey, if my left biceps feels a little bit weaker than the right, I just need to work my left bicep more. No, you need to understand it might be a motor pattern thing first. And for everyone, it comes down to it is a motor pattern issue first. Our brains are more designed off of motor patterns than it is strength. Yes, you might feel when you get into your lifts that, oh, one side feels a little bit different. Go back, look at your motor patterning first, look at your asymmetries of the body, and then find ways to help resolve those asymmetries and fix those asymmetries, and then you can train the system. And I'm not saying at all that you don't have to do bilateral work. I do bilateral work all the time in my programs. I love Olympic lifting, and that is probably the biggest bilaterally driven sport there is, because there's 2 hands on a bar, there's 2 feet on the floor. Bar goes either overhead from the chest to overhead or from the floor to overhead. And sequencing the body to move through space is all motor pattern. It is not through strength. You can be strong, but if you don't have the motor pattern, it's going to be sloppy and you're going to miss those lifts. But I also don't worry about my asymmetrical being because as you start to time the system up and build those sequences, your body learns the motor patterns and it learns that it can manage the asymmetries in the body. And we don't have to then worry about, oh, if the left leg's a little bit weaker than the right leg on this push, I don't care. And I love having this conversation with other coaches because even if I test and I do have asymmetries, that doesn't limit me from doing the exercises. It doesn't limit me from going out to squatting if I have a left and right asymmetrical strength on my legs. Not at all, because you might find people with asymmetry scores that can go out and squat 500 pounds. That's okay. Now, the scores aren't going to be egregious. It's not going to be 25-30% difference. If you are someone who's getting 25%, 30 plus difference on your asymmetries, then it's just about patterning the body and putting it through exercises to get it stronger and getting reps over reps of sequencing that pattern. And to do that, you have to strength train. To wrap up here, one of the biggest caveats of the realm of just being an asymmetrical human is to strengthen it, you're going to have to put it in deliberate patterns and you're going to have to load those patterns. Something running will not really help pattern you and become less asymmetrical. Now, if you're looking to get better at running, you address the asymmetries and understand it. You turn on certain muscles in certain patterns in the body, and then you go allow the system to run as you capture those patterns. Then you start to build that symmetrical sense in patterning that you won't get injured and you don't have to worry about. At the end of the day, when I do hear asymmetries, I don't get bothered about it. Neither should you. Neither should you worry about it, to understand that we will always be asymmetrical. We need to control our asymmetries. And when we do see asymmetries pop up on a strength score or a test score, we need to learn how to address them from the right posture and the right position that the human body needs to be in to train them.
Matt Gluckman and Eric Menchie here from Think Fitness Life. Our entire careers have been dedicated to fitness, particularly how the mind helps the body. We've been around gyms and nutrition strategies for 25 plus years collectively, and nothing harms or helps better than your own mind, untrained or trained. Pushing beyond your limits, overcoming whatever's thrown your way, and making the decision to show up day in and day out as a lifestyle takes more soul than sand. And what I mean by that is when you can get your mindset and heart leading you consistently in the direction of your goals and dreams, well, it's just a matter of time before you have the performance, physique, or quality of life you're yearning for. So your thoughts will stem from your beliefs, which will then lead you to action, which develop into your behavior and ultimately lead you to results. It's really that simple. Our process takes time and it takes open communication. It's amazing what pops up along the fitness journey to betterment, and we can be there every step of the way. To learn more or apply for coaching, visit www.thinkfitnesslife.com. Start recreating your life today.